So the first thing is, when you talk about the economy, this is Joe Biden's economy, and we inherited $2 trillion of debt, the highest peacetime deficits in American history, a $1.2 trillion trade deficit, which fundamentally means we're not making enough of our own stuff. And the president came in and he said, this is not always going to be easy. It would have been very easy for Donald Trump to do what administrations past have done, which is borrow a lot of money and continue fueling the national debt. He said, no, we need a reset. We need a
Donald Trump's administration has been defined by screw-ups and scandals, and two of the biggest screw-ups in his administration, Vance and Mike Waltz, are responsible for one of the biggest scandals. Of course, I'm talking about Signalgate, the very reason that Mike Waltz was relieved of his duties, or given the stanky boot, today. And if you thought that they couldn't find a way to screw this up anymore on a day in which so much attention has been paid to Signalgate, you're wrong. Because texts between Vance and Mike Waltz just leaked in a humiliating new problem for Donald Trump that we are going to get into. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, it wasn't just these texts that led to Vance having such a bad day. He was interviewed by Bret Baier and confronted over Mike Waltz's firing. And we're going to get into that interview, which actually started with a question on the economy.
The president thinks that we have to make more of our own stuff.
The economy shrank. First time in 3 years. People are pointing to the tariff policy. There are people looking at their 401ks that are worried. What do you tell them? Is this going to work?
So the first thing is, when you talk about the economy, this is Joe Biden's economy, and we inherited $2 trillion of debt, the highest peacetime deficits in American history, a $1.2 trillion trade deficit, which fundamentally means we're not making enough of our own stuff. And the president came in and he said, this is not always going to be easy. It would have been very easy for Donald Trump to do what administrations past have done, which is borrow a lot of money and continue fueling the national debt. He said, no, we need a reset. We need American workers to have better jobs. We need to protect the jobs that they have right now. And we need to be more self-reliant as an economy, which, by the way, will drive down those skyrocketing levels of debt that we've seen. That is what he promised he was going to do. And he came in and we've started that process. Now,
Little strange to be seeing real journalism done at Fox. But good job on Bret Baier for asking a real question of JD. And at what point? JD, is this no longer Joe Biden's economy? Because when the stock market was inflated a little bit to begin Donald Trump's term, I don't remember you saying, thank you so much, Joe Biden, for this booming stock market we have. I don't remember that. Donald Trump actually called it the Trump stock market. Donald Trump was calling Joe Biden's stock market his stock market when he was running for president. So whose economy is it? Well, clearly they don't know. And clearly Vance can't come up with a good reason not only for why the economy is tanking. By the way, it's your fault, but why Mike Waltz was fired. Take a look at what he tried to say.
President, thanks for the time.
good to see you.
I want to talk to you about all this trip and what the purpose of it and your speech.
Sure.
But I want to start with the breaking news.
Yeah.
Why was Mike Waltz let go?
So he wasn't let go. He is being made ambassador to the United Nations, which, of course, is a Senate-confirmed position. I think you can make a good argument that it's a promotion. But we brought Mike on to do some serious reforms of the National Security Council. He has done that. I like Mike. I think he's a great guy. He's got the trust of both me and the president. But we also thought that he'd make a better UN ambassador as we get beyond this stage of the reforms that we've made to the National Security Council. You saw the president announce that Marco Rubio is going to step in as interim leader of the National Security Council. I think the media wants to frame this as a firing. Donald Trump has fired a lot of people. He doesn't give them Senate-confirmed appointments afterwards. What he thinks is that Mike Waltz is going to better serve the administration, most importantly, the American people in that role, and I happen to agree with him.
But
Somehow, some way, this is being spun as a promotion by the MAGA media, and of course, Donald Trump's administration, saying that Mike Waltz was so good at his job that we decided to give him a new one. Well, if Mike Waltz was so good at his job, why didn't you? Why didn't you just want him doing his job? A very important job, mind you. A job so important that his leaking of classified information caused one of the biggest scandals we've ever seen in presidential history. Do you have a reason? No. And JD's response to Signalgate at large just made him look ridiculous, especially with what we're about to get into.
Result of the Signal chat. I mean, you were on that chat and we saw the fallout from it. Is this a result of that?
No, it's not, Brett. I mean, look, what we came into the administration, and of course the president in his first term had some serious issues with the National Security Council. He said, Mike, you need to go in here, fire, frankly, a lot of people who aren't loyal to my agenda, who we think aren't even loyal to the American people, bring in the right collection of people to actually make the National Security Council function. And Mike has done that. And now it's time for Mike to do something else because he's done the job that I think he was asked to do. If the president wanted to fire him over the Signal thing, which, by the way, was a total nothing burger of a story, he would have just done it. But he actually decided it's better for Mike to be in this new role. He's given Mike the new role. That's it.
So what is
No one's even using Signal anymore. There's no way anymore. Classified information could leak off of someone's phones. Except for JD and Mike Waltz's text today. We could check out this article right here. Fired idiot Waltz leaked. One last Signal chat with Vance before getting booted. Fired National Security Advisor Mike Waltz can't help but leak his Signal chats. Waltz, whose downfall was precipitated by Signalgate in March, was photographed on the messaging application again on Wednesday, during his final cabinet meeting as a member of Donald Trump's cabinet. A zoomed-in look at Waltz's phone shows he was texting Vice President J.D. Vance and had a voice call with Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. In other Signal chats, the list of names were Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. I have seen confirmation from my counterpart. It's turned off. The message with Vance reads, "He's going to be here," is seen in the exposed phone screen. It epitomizes Waltz's 101-day stint leading the National Security Council, the second shortest in White House history, trailing only Donald Trump's first National Security Secretary, Michael Flynn, who lasted just 3 weeks. Trump stood behind Waltz in the aftermath of the Signalgate scandal, perhaps hesitant to see his administration suffer from the same sort of intense turnover that plagued his first. Politico reported Thursday that Trump began searching for a Waltz replacement weeks ago. However, in the intermediate aftermath of the Signal fiasco, Rubio has been named his temporary replacement, but the long-term National Security Advisor is yet to be announced by the White House. Witt has been named as the likely favorite in reports. Waltz, who left his job as a Republican congressman from a deep red district in Florida to join the Trump administration, was announced Thursday as Trump's ambassador to the United Nations. So, still in the final hours of his time as National Security Advisor, this man is still somehow leaking texts. And what's crazy to me is that usually, on your phone, you can get a protective screen, so only when you're directly looking at it can you see what you're looking at. This guy is not only using his private phone and very much publicly during a cabinet meeting, so not paying attention, but he has no sort of protective cover on it. Like, this is just complete idiocy. And it just makes everyone in this administration, especially Vance, who is defending him today, look moronic. But that is what we can expect out of those doing foreign policy in Donald Trump's White House. And Chris Murphy had more to say about that in this clip right here.
The House says it has signed an economic partnership with Ukraine. The deal will give America access to some of Ukraine's critical minerals and natural resources. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says this will accelerate Kyiv's economic recovery and repay America for the U.S. military aid it has provided, something President Trump has been demanding. According to the Washington Post, the deal falls short of providing any concrete security guarantees to Ukraine, but it does affirm a, quote, long-term strategic alignment with the United States. Joining us now, Democratic member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. Thank you for joining us. What do you make of this agreement?
It's nonsense. It just is. Most of the minerals that are available for exploitation in Ukraine are in the parts of Ukraine that are controlled by Russia. And so this agreement doesn't really mean much if Russia continues to own eastern Ukraine and continues to march towards Kyiv. And right now, all indications are that Donald Trump's policy is to hand Ukraine to Vladimir Putin. And in that case, this agreement isn't worth the paper that it's written on. Vladimir Vladimir Putin isn't sitting down to negotiate for one simple reason, because Donald Trump is telling him, I am not going to continue to support Ukraine militarily, no matter what, whether you sit down at the table or if you don't sit down at the table. So Vladimir Putin looks at that and says, why would I negotiate? You're telling me you are giving up on Ukraine. So if I just continue to fight the war, I will ultimately own everything I have now, or potentially everything, including Kyiv. So this agreement means nothing if the Trump policy is, as it is today, to hand over Ukraine to Vladimir Putin. That's the direction that we are heading in. And right now, there is no sign that Vladimir Putin's giving up on the war, and no sign that we're ever getting any deal on minerals, because Vladimir Putin's going to be in charge.
Kathy.
So, Senator, how do you interpret the comments coming from the White House from Scott Bessent, for example, that this is some sort of a security guarantee because the United States isn't going to want to be doing business in Ukraine with Ukrainians and have those business interests attacked? I mean, we're murky on the details of this deal yet. We haven't really got them. But we have had Scott Bessent come out kind of saying that they want a free, sovereign and independent Ukraine, for example. Well, that would go against the idea that Russia could just walk in 3 years' time and take Ukraine.
Yeah, these guys lie. I mean, they lie. That's not true, right? Donald Trump spent all of the last year of Biden's presidency trying to kill aid for Ukraine. If Donald Trump got his way, Ukraine wouldn't have any weapons right now. Donald Trump has no plans to resupply Ukraine. And by the way, Ukraine's going to start running out of bullets and start running out of serious weaponry by the summer and fall of this year. That's why Putin continues to march forward, refuses to sit down at the negotiating table. So, there are all sorts of instances in which the president's national security team goes out and tells a story that isn't true. What is true, unfortunately, is that Trump has decided that he will never support any additional weapons for Ukraine. Europe will try to fill in the breach, but there are certain weapon systems that only the United States can provide. And without us, Vladimir Putin ultimately is going to win this war. That's just the truth, no matter what Scott Bessent or Marco Rubio
says. I've said this many times before, but I think it requires repeating. Republicans like to frame the chaos of Donald Trump's administration simply as mean tweets that the liberals get all upset about. But it's real chaos that puts us in real harm. That's what Signalgate was. And Donald Trump's ridiculous outbursts at Fed Chair Jerome Powell, that weakens the dollar. That reduces investment in America from foreign countries. Donald Trump's breaking of our laws makes America an unstable place to do business. So yeah, the chaos has a real trickle-down impact on you. That's very observable. And that's why we always need to be calling it out and framing it that exact same way. The decisions Donald Trump makes, all the time, will always be affecting your life. Every stupid mistake is going to cost you. And that is why we have to call them out every time they happen. We're certainly doing so on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you.